Hey guys, tonight we're going to slow things down and sit with a story that matters. Evelyn Carter, a black woman in her 50s, carries a quiet strength that's been forged through years of navigating spaces not built for her. In the heart of Atlanta, she steps into a world of glittering luxury only to face the sting of prejudice that assumes her place is anywhere but there. This is a tale of dignity under fire of courage that doesn't shout but shines. Before we begin, please like the video and subscribe, but only if stories like this truly move you. Comment your city and the time you're watching. Now close your eyes or don't, it's your choice. Either way, you're about to witness something real. The Atlanta sun dips low, painting Peachtree Street in hues of amber and gold. Evelyn Carter adjusts her navy scarf, her steps measured as she approaches the glass facade of sterling elegance, the city's crown jewel of luxury jewelry. Her modest attire, dark slacks, a crisp white blouse, and low heels belies the weight of her presence. At 53, Evelyn's smooth brown skin and steady gaze carry a story of resilience, etched in the faint lines around her eyes. The boutique's doors slide open with a soft hiss, and she steps into a world where wealth whispers in every detail. Crystal chandeliers drip light onto polished marble, and display cases gleam with emeralds that pulse like captured starlight. The air hums with the faint clink of champagne flutes and the murmur of privileged voices. Evelyn's shadow stretches long across the floor, heavy with unspoken resolve. She pauses, her fingertips grazing the edge of a velvet-lined case. The emeralds inside seem to hold secrets, their green depths reflecting her own quiet determination. She's not here to browse idly. She's come with purpose, though no one in this opulent space suspects it. The staff, clad in tailored black vests, glide past her, their smiles reserved for the fur-draped matrons and suited men who command their attention. A young clerk, Lena Harris, barely 25, with auburn hair pinned tightly back, offers a perfunctory nod, but quickly turns to a white-haired woman in a cashmere coat, presenting a diamond bracelet with reverence. Evelyn feels the chill of invisibility, a familiar ache. It's not just the lack of greeting, it's the weight of eyes that judge her presence as an intrusion. She's known this script since childhood, when store clerks trailed her family in small-town Georgia, assuming theft before purchase. Now, decades later, in a city that prides itself on progress, the same silent assumptions linger. Her shoulders remain square, her stride deliberate as she moves toward the central display, where a single emerald pendant glows under a spotlight. Its price tag, discreet but unmistakable, reads $85,000. She studies it, her expression unreadable, though a flicker of resolve tightens her jaw. Across the showroom, Roland Pierce, the store manager, stands like a sentinel. At 48, his silver-flecked hair and tailored navy suit exude authority, his hazel eyes sharp, with the confidence of a man who knows his domain. He's the gatekeeper of this glittering empire, deciding who belongs and who doesn't with a glance. His gaze lands on Evelyn, and a faint smirk tugs at his lips. To him, she's an anomaly, a black woman in plain clothes daring to linger where only the elite tread. He murmurs something to a nearby clerk, and the young man stifles a laugh, casting a sidelong glance at Evelyn. She catches the exchange, her heart tightening, but her face remains a mask of calm. This is not her first stage, nor her first performance. She sat in boardrooms where her voice was dismissed, walked streets where her presence drew suspicion. Each slight has forged her like steel tempered in fire. She steps closer to the emerald pendant, her reflection mingling with its green glow. "Beautiful craftsmanship," she says softly, almost to herself, her voice steady but warm, carrying the faintest trace of a southern lilt. Lena, stationed nearby, hesitates. Her hazel eyes flicker with unease, as if she senses the injustice but fears stepping out of line. She starts to approach, then stops as Roland's voice cuts through the air. Lena assists Mrs. Thornton with the sapphire collection, he says, his tone clipped, redirecting her to a wealthy patron. Lena's cheeks flush, and she hurries away, leaving Evelyn alone once more. The dismissal stings, but Evelyn's gaze doesn't waver. She knows some truths linger waiting to be unveiled. The showroom pulses with activity. A couple in their 60s, dripping in designer labels, sweeps in, and the staff springs to life. Champagne flows, laughter ripples, and Roland's polished charm envelops the newcomers. Evelyn watches her stillness, a stark contrast to the flurry around her. She's not invisible to everyone. A security guard, Marcus Tate, a broad-shouldered black man in his 30s, lingers near the entrance. His dark eyes meet hers briefly, a silent acknowledgement heavy with shared understanding. He shifts uncomfortably, his hand resting on his radio, bound by duty, but uneasy with the role he's expected to play. Roland's attention returns to Evelyn, his smirk sharpening into something colder. He strides toward her, his polished shoes clicking on the marble, each step a declaration of control. "Excuse me, ma'am," he says, his voice smooth but laced with condescension. "The emerald collection is reserved for serious buyers. Perhaps you prefer our silver pieces." He gestures toward a distant case where jewelry priced in the hundreds glints modestly. His words are a blade slicing through the pretense of politeness, and a few patrons turn their curiosity tinged with amusement. Evelyn's breath catches, but her expression remains serene. "I'm interested in this pendant," she says, her tone, even her eyes locked on his. The defiance is subtle, a quiet challenge that Roland doesn't expect. His smirk falters for a heartbeat, then hardens. "These pieces require financial verification," he says louder now, ensuring the room hears. "Store policy." The lie hangs in the air, unchallenged by the staff, though Lena's hands tremble as she arranges a tray nearby. Mrs. Thornton, the wealthy patron, lets out a soft chuckle, her diamond earrings catching the light. The room seems to contract, the chandelier's glow turning harsh. Evelyn feels the weight of every stare, the silent agreement that she doesn't belong. Her fingers tighten around the strap of her leather handbag, a simple but well-worn piece that's seen her through countless battles. She's not a stranger to this game, being made to prove her worth, her right to exist in spaces like this. In her mind, memories surface: a childhood teacher who assumed she'd never excel, a corporate mentor who advised her to tone down her presence. Each moment has built this one, and she stands ready. Roland leans closer, his voice dropping to a patronizing whisper. "Let's not make this difficult. You're holding up our valued customers." The word "valued" lands like a slap, and a murmur ripples through the crowd. Evelyn's pulse quickens, but her voice remains steady. "I'd like to speak with someone about this pendant," she says, each word deliberate, a refusal to be erased. Roland's eyes narrow, his authority challenged in a way he's unaccustomed to. He straightens, signaling Marcus with a curt nod. "Escort her to the exit," he says, his tone final. Marcus hesitates, his jaw tightening. He steps forward, his voice low. "Ma'am, please," he says, his eyes pleading for her to comply, to spare them both this scene. Evelyn meets his gaze, her expression softening for a moment. She sees the conflict in him, the fear of losing a job that feeds his family. But she also sees the spark of recognition, the shared weight of being judged before being known. She turns back to Roland, her voice calm but unyielding. "I'm not leaving," she says, and the words echo like a promise. The boutique holds its breath, the air thick with unspoken prejudice and the faint scent of expensive perfume. Evelyn stands alone by the emerald display, her shadow a quiet defiance against the glittering excess. Roland's face reddens, his control slipping. The patrons watch, some with disdain, others with a flicker of unease. Lena, frozen behind a counter, clutches a jewelry tray, her knuckles white. Marcus shifts his weight, torn between duty and conscience. In this moment, Evelyn is a lighthouse in a storm, her presence a challenge to the world that seeks to diminish her. The truth she knows is a seed buried deep, waiting for the right moment to break through. The chandeliers of sterling elegance cast a fractured glow across the marble floor, their light sharp and unyielding, like the judgment that pins Evelyn Carter in place. She stands by the emerald pendant, its green heart pulsing under the spotlight, a silent witness to the storm brewing around her. At 53, Evelyn's presence is a quiet rebellion, her navy scarf a stark contrast to the boutique's opulence. Her fingers rest lightly on the glass case, steady despite the weight of Roland Pierce's gaze. The store manager, his silver-flecked hair gleaming, looms at the room's center, his authority a tangible force. His hazel eyes narrow, calculating. As he senses a challenge he's determined to crush. Roland's voice cuts through the murmur of privileged patrons. "Ma'am, you're disrupting our operations," he says, his tone a polished blade loud enough to draw every eye. "If you can't comply with our policies, you'll need to leave." The word policies drips with false legitimacy, a shield for his prejudice. Evelyn's jaw tightens, but her expression remains serene, a mask forged through years of navigating spaces that deem her unworthy. She feels the sting of his words, the familiar ache of being reduced to an outsider. Yet her resolve hardens like roots sinking deeper into unyielding earth. Patrons turn their curiosity, a mix of amusement and disdain. A woman in a fur-trimmed coat, Mrs. Eleanor Vaughan, 60s, sips champagne, her lips curling into a smirk. Some people don't know their place, she murmurs to her companion. A suited man who nods his eyes, flicking to Evelyn with detached interest. The staff clad in black vests avert their gazes, their silence complicit. Lena Harris, the young clerk, lingers near a sapphire display, her auburn hair catching the light. Her hands tremble as she polishes a ring, her hazel eyes darting to Evelyn with a flicker of guilt. She wants to speak to intervene, but Roland's shadow looms too large. Evelyn's voice, when it comes, is steady, a southern lilt threading through her words. I've asked to discuss this pendant, she says, her gaze locked on Roland. Is that not allowed? The question is a quiet defiance, a spark in the tense air. Roland's smirk falters, his control tested. He steps closer, his polished shoes clicking, each sound a declaration of dominance. You're not discussing anything, he snaps, his voice rising. You're causing a scene. Leave before you embarrass yourself further. The words land like a whip, and Mrs. Vaughan's chuckle ripples through the crowd, a cruel echo. The boutique seems to shrink, its glittering walls closing in. Evelyn feels every stare, the weight of assumptions about her race, her clothes, her right to be here. Her fingers tighten around her handbag strap, the leather worn smooth by years of battles. Boardrooms where her ideas were dismissed, neighborhoods where her presence drew suspicion. She remembers her mother's voice, low and fierce, never let them see you break. That wisdom anchors her now, her breath slow and deliberate. She meets Roland's gaze, her eyes a storm held in check. Some truths linger, waiting to be unveiled. Marcus Tate, the security guard, shifts uneasily by the entrance. His broad frame fills the doorway, but his dark eyes carry a quiet conflict. At 30, he's known the bite of prejudice, the way it cloaks itself in rules and smiles. He's seen Roland turn away customers before, always with a veneer of propriety, but this feels different, raw public wrong. His hand hovers over his radio duty, warring with conscience. He catches Evelyn's eye, a fleeting connection, and his jaw tightens. He wants to act, to speak, but the fear of losing his job, his daughter's school fees, holds him back. Roland seizes the moment, his voice booming. This isn't a charity shop, he says, gesturing at Evelyn's modest attire. Our emeralds are for serious buyers, not window shoppers. The insult draws gasps and stifled laughter from the crowd. Mrs. Vaughan raises her glass as if toasting Roland's audacity. A younger patron, a man in his 30s with a sleek watch, pulls out his phone recording discreetly, his face a mix of fascination and unease. Lena, still clutching her polishing cloth, steps back, her cheeks flushing. She knows Roland's policy is a lie. No one else has been asked for financial proof today. Evelyn's heart pounds, but her voice remains calm, a lighthouse in the storm. I'd like to see the store's policy in writing, she says, each word deliberate, cutting through the noise. The room stills, the challenge unexpected. Roland's face reddens, his authority fraying. You don't dictate terms here, he snaps, his finger jabbing toward the exit. Marcus, remove her. Now, the command is a gauntlet thrown, and the boutique holds its breath. Marcus steps forward, his movements reluctant, his voice low. Ma'am, please come with me, he says, his eyes avoiding hers, heavy with regret. Evelyn doesn't move. Her shadow, cast long by the chandeliers, seems to grow, a silent defiance against the glittering excess. I'm not disrupting anything. She says, her tone unyielding but calm. I'm a customer like anyone else. The words hang in the air, a truth too often ignored. Roland laughs, a harsh theatrical sound. A customer, you? He scoffs, turning to the crowd for validation. You can't afford a single gem in this store. The cruelty lands, and Evelyn feels it, a blade twisting in old wounds. She thinks of her daughter, now grown, who once asked why people stared at them in stores. Because they don't see us, Evelyn had said. Now she refuses to be unseen. Lena's hands shake as she sets down her cloth, her eyes darting to Roland, then Evelyn. She remembers her own moments of being overlooked, a small-town girl dismissed in this city of wealth. She wants to speak, to say something, but fear chokes her. The patron's whispers grow louder, a chorus of judgment. Mrs. Vaughan leans toward her companion, her voice carrying. She should have known better than to come here. The words are a mirror reflecting the boutique's unspoken rules: wealth and whiteness, grand entry. Anything less is suspect. Evelyn's resolve deepens, her silence a weapon. She stands taller, her gaze sweeping the room, taking in every face, the smirking elites, the complicit staff, the conflicted few. She's not just fighting Roland, she's challenging a system that thrives on exclusion. Her handbag, simple but sturdy, feels heavier, a reminder of the battles she's won to reach this moment. She thinks of her grandmother who cleaned houses for families like Mrs. Vaughn's, her dignity unbowed despite their scorn. That legacy fuels Evelyn now, her voice a quiet thunder. "I'm not leaving until I'm treated with respect," she says, and the words ripple, unsettling the room's fragile order. Roland's face twists his control. Slipping, he steps closer, his voice a low growl. "You're done here," he says, his finger inches from her face. "Don't make me call the police." The threat is a spark igniting the tension. Marcus freezes his hand on his radio, his eyes pleading with Evelyn to comply, to spare them this escalation. But Evelyn's gaze is unwavering, her presence a rock against the tide. The emerald pendant glows behind her, its light a silent ally reflecting the fire in her eyes. The boutique is a stage, and Evelyn, though alone, commands it, her quiet strength, a force no one can ignore. The air, in sterling elegance, thickens heavy with the scent of perfume and the weight of unspoken prejudice. Evelyn Carter stands resolute by the emerald pendant, its green glow a quiet beacon in the storm of Roland Pierce's escalating cruelty. At 53, her navy scarf is a modest shield against the boutique's glittering excess, but her eyes burn with a fire that no chandelier can outshine. Roland, his silver-flecked hair catching the light, paces before her, his navy suit a uniform of authority now fraying at the edges. His hazel eyes glint with fury, his control slipping as Evelyn refuses to bend. The showroom, once a temple of wealth, feels like a stage where every glance is a judgment, every whisper a verdict. Roland's voice rises sharp and theatrical. "You're wasting everyone's time," he snaps, his finger jabbing toward Evelyn. "This isn't a place for games." The word games is a deliberate barb, implying her presence is a farce. Patrons lean in their faces, a mix of amusement and unease. Mrs. Eleanor Vaughn, her fur coat draped over a leather chair, sips champagne, her smirk unwavering. "She's making a spectacle," she murmurs to her companion, who nods, his gold cufflinks glinting. The staff, frozen in their black vests, avoid Evelyn's gaze, their silence a heavy complicity. Evelyn's heart pounds, but her expression remains a mask of calm, her hands clasped tightly around her worn leather handbag. The sting of Roland's words cuts deep, echoing a lifetime of slights, store clerks who followed her, colleagues who questioned her credentials. She thinks of her father, a janitor who taught her to hold her head high despite the world's disdain. That lesson anchors her now, her breath slow and deliberate. She meets Roland's gaze, her voice steady. "I'm here to shop like anyone else," she says, each word a quiet rebellion. The simplicity of the statement unsettles the room, a truth too often buried under layers of bias. Lena Harris, the young clerk, lingers near a sapphire display, her auburn hair falling loose from its tight bun. Her hazel eyes flicker with guilt, her hands trembling as she rearranges a tray of rings. She's seen Roland's tactics before, dismissing customers who don't fit his vision of wealth, but this feels different, raw and public. Lena remembers her own struggles, a scholarship kid in a wealthy college, overlooked for opportunities. She wants to speak to bridge the gap, but Roland's authority looms like a storm cloud. She catches Evelyn's eye, a fleeting moment of connection, and her chest tightens with shame for her silence. Roland seizes the crowd's attention, his voice booming. "Store policy requires financial verification for high-value items," he declares, gesturing at the emerald pendant. "If you can't provide it, you're not a customer." The lie is blatant. Mrs. Vaughn purchased a $90,000 necklace minutes ago without a single document. Patrons murmur, some nodding in approval, others shifting uncomfortably. A young man recording on his phone zooms in, his face torn between fascination and disgust. Marcus Tate, the security guard, stands rigid by the entrance, his dark eyes heavy with conflict. At 33, he knows the cost of defiance, the risk to his daughter's future. Yet Evelyn's quiet strength stirs something in him, a spark of resistance. Evelyn's fingers tighten on her handbag, the leather a lifeline to her past. She thinks of her daughter now, a teacher who once asked why they were treated differently in stores. "Because they see our skin first," Evelyn had said, her voice breaking. Now she refuses to let that truth define this moment. "Show me the policy," she says, her tone unyielding but calm, a challenge that cuts through Roland's bluster. The room stills, the air crackling with tension. Roland's face reddens, his smirk twisting into a scowl. "You don't make demands here," he snaps, stepping closer, his presence a wall of arrogance. The boutique seems to pulse, its chandeliers casting stark shadows. Evelyn feels the weight of every stare, the silent agreement that she's an intruder. Yet she stands taller, her shadow stretching long across the marble, a quiet defiance against the glittering excess. I'm not asking for special treatment, she says, her southern lilt threading through her words. I'm asking for fairness. The word fairness hangs in the air, a beacon in the storm. Lena's breath catches, her hands pausing over the jewelry tray. She wants to act, to say something, but fear chokes her. Marcus shifts his weight, his hand hovering over his radio, his jaw tight with indecision. Roland laughs, a harsh, grating sound. Fairness, he scoffs, turning to the crowd for validation. This is a business, not a charity. The insult draws gasps and stifled laughter. Mrs. Vaughn raises her glass, her eyes gleaming with cruel delight. A younger patron, a woman in her 20s with a sleek bob, lowers her phone, her face softening with unease. Evelyn's pulse quickens, but her voice remains steady. A business respects its customers, she says, her gaze locked on Roland. All of them. The words are a gauntlet, a refusal to be erased. Roland's eyes narrow, his control fraying. Marcus, get her out. He barks, his voice a whip crack. Marcus steps forward, his movements heavy, his voice low. Ma'am, I need you to come with me, he says, his eyes avoiding hers, heavy with regret. Evelyn meets his gaze, her expression softening for a moment. She sees the conflict in him, the shared weight of being judged before being known. I'm not the one causing trouble, she says, her tone gentle but firm. The words resonate, a quiet thunder in the oppressive air. Marcus hesitates, his hand dropping from his radio, his face a mask of turmoil. The crowd watches, some smirking, others holding their breath, sensing a shift in the room's fragile order. Roland's face twists, his patience gone. You're done, he growls, his finger inches from Evelyn's face. You don't belong here. The words are a blade cutting through the pretense of civility. Evelyn feels them, a twist in old wounds, but her resolve deepens. She thinks of her grandmother, who faced similar scorn, yet taught her to stand firm. That legacy fuels her now, her voice a quiet storm. I belong anywhere I choose to be, she says, and the words ripple, unsettling the boutique's foundation. Some truths linger, waiting to be unveiled. Lena's hands shake as she sets down her tray, her eyes darting to Roland, then Evelyn. She remembers a moment from her past, a professor who dismissed her potential, assuming she'd fail. That memory stirs her now, a spark of courage. She steps forward, her voice trembling. Mr. Pierce, maybe we should. Roland cuts her off with a glare, his authority absolute. Stay out of this, Lena, he snaps, and she retreats, her cheeks flushing with shame. The patron's whispers grow louder, a chorus of judgment. Mrs. Vaughn leans toward her companion, her voice carrying. She's pushing too far, she says, her tone dripping with disdain. Evelyn's resolve is a lighthouse unyielding in the storm. She stands alone, her shadow a quiet defiance against the glittering excess. The emerald pendant glows behind her, its light a silent ally reflecting the fire in her eyes. Roland's threats, the crowd's judgment, the staff's silence. They're all part of a system she's faced before. She's not just fighting for herself. She's challenging a world that thrives on exclusion. Her handbag feels heavier, a reminder of the battles she's won to reach this moment. The boutique is a crucible, and Evelyn, though tested, is unbreakable, her quiet strength a force that will soon reshape this glittering empire. The chandeliers of sterling elegance cast a harsh glow, their light fracturing across the marble floor like shards of broken promises. Evelyn Carter stands by the emerald pendant, its green heart, a silent witness to the storm now cresting around her. At 53, her navy scarf is a quiet defiance against the boutique's glittering excess, her smooth brown skin and steady gaze a testament to battles fought and won. Roland Pierce, his silver-flecked hair slicked back, looms before her, his navy suit a fading emblem of authority. His hazel eyes burn with fury, his control unraveling as Evelyn's presence challenges the world he's built. The showroom, once a shrine to wealth, is now a crucible, its air thick with the scent of perfume and the weight of unspoken prejudice. Roland's voice is a whip crack, his patience gone. You've crossed the line, he snarls, his finger inches from Evelyn's face. Leave now or I'll have you arrested for trespassing. The threat is a spark igniting the tension. Patrons gasp, their faces a mix of shock and cruel delight. Mrs. Eleanor Vaughn, her fur coat draped over a chair, leans forward, her champagne glass, forgotten her smirk, sharp as a blade. She's gone too far, she whispers to her companion who nods, his gold cufflinks catching the light. The staff in their black vests stand frozen, their silence a heavy complicity. Evelyn's heart thunders, but her expression is a mask of calm, her hands clasped tightly around her worn leather handbag. Roland's words cut deep, echoing a lifetime of exclusion, store clerks who shadowed her bosses who doubted her worth. She thinks of her mother who faced similar scorn, yet taught her to stand firm. That legacy burns in her now, her breath slow and deliberate. "I'm not trespassing," she says, her southern lilt threading through her words, steady and unyielding. "I'm exactly where I belong." The statement is a gauntlet, a quiet thunder that silences the room. Some truths linger, waiting to be unveiled. Marcus Tate, the security guard, stands rigid by the entrance, his broad frame a shadow in the doorway. At 30, his dark eyes carry the weight of conflict torn between duty and conscience. He's known prejudice the way it hides in smiles and rules. His hand hovers over his radio, his jaw tight as Roland's command echoes in his mind. "Marcus, remove her." Roland barks again, his voice a desperate grasp at control. Marcus steps forward, his movements heavy, his voice barely above a whisper. "Ma'am, please," he says, his eyes pleading heavy with regret. He sees his own struggles in Evelyn's defiance, the cost of standing up in a world that demands compliance. Lena Harris, the young clerk, lingers near a sapphire display, her auburn hair loose, her hazel eyes wide with guilt. Her hands tremble as she clutches a jewelry tray, her heart racing. She's seen Roland's cruelty before, but this is different. Public, raw, unforgivable. She thinks of her own moments of being dismissed, a small-town girl in a city of wealth. Her voice when it comes is a tremor. "Mr. Pierce, maybe we should check the policy," she says, stepping forward, her courage fragile but growing. Roland's glare cuts her off. "Stay out of this, Lena." He snaps his authority a wall. Lena retreats, her cheeks flushing, but her eyes linger on Evelyn, a spark of allyship flickering. The crowd watches, their whispers, a chorus of judgment. A young man recording on his phone zooms in, his face torn between fascination and unease. A woman in her 20s lowers her phone, her sleek bob framing a softening expression. Mrs. Vaughn's companion murmurs. She's making a fool of herself, but the words lack conviction. The room's sensing a shift. Evelyn stands taller, her shadow stretching long across the marble, a quiet defiance against the glittering excess. The emerald pendant glows behind her, its light a silent ally reflecting the fire in her eyes. She feels the weight of every stare, the silent agreement that she's an intruder. Yet she's not fighting for herself alone, she's challenging a system that thrives on exclusion. Roland's face twists, his control slipping. "You're done," he growls, his voice a low thunder. "You don't belong here." The words are a blade twisting in old wounds. Evelyn's pulse quickens, but her resolve is a lighthouse, unyielding in the storm. She thinks of her daughter who once asked why they were treated differently. "Because they don't see us," Evelyn had said. Now she refuses to be unseen. She draws a slow breath, her voice rising clear and commanding, cutting through the oppressive air. "I'm Evelyn Carter," she says, each word a stone dropped in still water. "I'm the CEO of Sterling Elegance." The room freezes, a collective gasp, swallowing the silence. Roland's smirk crumbles his face, draining of color, his hazel eyes wide with shock. Mrs. Vaughn's champagne glass slips, shattering on the marble, the sound a sharp punctuation. Lena's mouth falls open, her jewelry tray clattering to the counter. Marcus steps back, his hand dropping from his radio, his eyes wide with awe and fear. The crowd murmurs, some rising to their feet, others clutching their phones, recording frantically. The young man zooms in, his hands shaking. The woman with the sleek bob whispers, "No way," her voice trembling with disbelief. Evelyn's gaze locks on Roland, her steely eyes unyielding. "You've humiliated a customer based on your assumptions," she says, her voice a quiet storm resonating through the showroom. "You've disrespected the very company you serve." The words are a verdict, exposing Roland's prejudice in the harsh light of truth. Roland stammers, his authority shattered. You can't be..." He chokes out, lunging for her handbag as if to seize proof. Evelyn steps back, her tone icy. "Don't touch my property," she says, producing a sleek ID card embossed with her name and title. Evelyn Carter, Chief Executive Officer. The photo matches her poised, resolute presence, undeniable. The boutique pulses with shock, the chandelier's glow turning warm, as if reflecting Evelyn's triumph. Lena's eyes fill with tears, a mix of admiration and shame. Marcus exhales, his shoulders sagging with relief, his face alight with quiet pride. The crowd's whispers turn to murmurs of awe, some patrons lowering their phones, their faces softening with respect. Mrs. Vaughn sits back, her smirk gone, her hands trembling. Roland's face flushes, his voice hoarse. "This is a mistake," he stammers, fumbling for his phone, his hands shaking. "I'll call corporate." Evelyn's voice cuts through, calm but unyielding. "Call Margaret Reynolds, the COO," she says. "Her number's in your emergency contacts." The command is a final blow, stripping Roland of his last defense. Lena darts to the counter, dialing frantically, her eyes locked on Evelyn with reverence. The crowd watches, the air crackling with the weight of a seismic shift. Roland's phone slips from his hand, clattering to the floor, his empire crumbling. Evelyn stands defiant, her shadow a quiet victory against the glittering excess, the emerald pendant glowing like a beacon of justice. The glass doors slide open, and Margaret Reynolds, a silver-haired woman in her 60s, enters, flanked by two legal advisors. Her face is grave, her usual warmth replaced by steely resolve. Evelyn turns, her expression calm but commanding. "Margaret, this manager has violated our values," she says, her voice resonating. "He's terminated effective immediately." Roland's face collapses, his voice a whisper. "You can't. I have a family," he pleads, but Evelyn's gaze is unwavering. "You chose to humiliate others," she says. "That choice has consequences." Margaret nods, motioning to the advisors. "Escort Mr. Pierce out," she says, her tone final. Roland stumbles, his shoulders slumped, led away as the crowd watches in stunned silence. Evelyn stands alone, the boutique transformed by her presence. The emerald pendant glows, a silent ally in her triumph. She's not just a CEO, she's a force, a beacon of dignity in a world that tried to dim her light. The room holds its breath, sensing the dawn of something new, a legacy forged in courage and truth. The chandeliers of sterling elegance cast a softer glow. Now their light no longer a harsh spotlight, but a warm embrace, bathing the marble floor in hues of gold and amber. Evelyn Carter stands at the center of the showroom, her navy scarf a quiet emblem of resilience, her smooth brown skin radiant under the transformed atmosphere. At 53, her presence is a lighthouse, steady and unyielding, guiding the boutique toward a new dawn. The emerald pendant, still glowing in its display, seems to pulse with her victory, its green heart a silent testament to the truth unveiled. The air, once thick with prejudice, now hums with possibility, the scent of perfume mingling with the faint promise of change. The glass doors stand open, admitting a gentle breeze from Peachtree Street, where Atlanta's evening pulses with life. Roland Pierce is gone, his silhouette, a fading memory, escorted out by Margaret Reynolds' legal advisors. The crowd remains, their faces no longer masks of judgment, but mirrors of awe and reflection. Mrs. Eleanor Vaughn sits silent, her fur coat forgotten, her hands clasped tightly, her earlier smirk replaced by a humbled stillness. The young man with a phone lowers it, his recording ended, his eyes wide with respect. The woman with the sleek bob wipes a tear, her expression soft with newfound understanding. Evelyn's gaze sweeps the room, taking in every face, the patrons, the staff, the conflicted souls who witnessed a reckoning. Lena Harris, the young clerk, steps forward, her auburn hair loose, her hazel eyes brimming with tears. "Miss Carter, I'm so sorry," she says, her voice trembling, but earnest. "I should have spoken up sooner." Evelyn's expression softens, her hand resting gently on Lena's shoulder. "You spoke when it mattered," she says, her southern lilt warm and forgiving. "That's where change begins." Lena nods, her shame easing, a spark of courage igniting within her. She clutches her jewelry tray, no longer a prop of complicity, but a tool of a new purpose. Marcus Tate, the security guard, stands by the entrance, his broad frame relaxed for the first time. At 30, his dark eyes shine with quiet pride, his earlier conflict resolved. He steps forward, his voice low but steady. "I didn't know who you were, ma'am," he says, his hand resting on his radio, no longer a symbol of duty, but of choice. "But I knew you were right." Evelyn meets his gaze, a shared understanding passing between them, two souls who face the same invisible barriers. "You saw me," she says, her voice a quiet thunder. "That's enough." Margaret Reynolds, the COO, returns, her silver hair catching the light, her face a blend of resolve and relief. She addresses the room, her voice clear and commanding. "Sterling Elegance will close for 2 weeks," she says, her words resonating. "Every staff member will undergo retraining, customer service. Yes, but more importantly, respect and fairness." She glances at Evelyn, a silent acknowledgement of her leadership. Full pay will be provided. Those who can't embrace this new culture are free to leave with severance. We're building something better. The staff nods, some with relief, others with determination. Lena's shoulders straighten, her resolve firming. Evelyn steps forward, her presence commanding without effort. This isn't about one person, she says, her voice resonating through the showroom, each word a stone laid in a new foundation. It's about every person who's been judged, dismissed, or made to feel small. We're not just selling jewelry, we're honoring dignity. The words ripple, touching every heart. A young patron, a black woman in her 20s, claps softly, her eyes shining with pride. Others join the applause, growing not for spectacle, but for truth. Mrs. Vaughn remains silent, her hands trembling, her earlier arrogance a distant memory. The boutique transforms before their eyes. The glass facade, once a barrier, feels open, inviting its transparency, a promise of inclusion. Evelyn envisions a future where customers of every background, black, white, young, old, wealthy, modest, walk through these doors without fear. She thinks of her grandmother, who cleaned houses for families like Mrs. Vaughn's, her dignity unbowed. She thinks of her daughter, a teacher shaping young minds who'll hear this story and know her mother stood for something greater. That legacy fuels Evelyn now, her resolve, a quiet fire that will reshape this glittering empire. Hours later, the story breaks beyond the boutique's walls. Videos captured by patrons flood social media, clips of Evelyn Stan Rowland's cruelty and her revelation as CEO. The hashtag Sterling Truth trends, sparking outrage, admiration, and countless stories of similar indignities. News outlets pick up the story, inviting Evelyn and Margaret for interviews. On screen, Evelyn is unassuming yet radiant, her words cutting through noise. Luxury isn't a fortress, she says. It's a space where everyone deserves respect. The impact ripples, prompting competitors to launch anti-bias training, their promises driven by public pressure and Evelyn's courage. Six months later, Sterling Elegance reopens its transformation, breathtaking. The opaque glass is gone, replaced by floor-to-ceiling panels that welcome every passerby. Low tables replace fortress-like counters, inviting connection. A sign by the entrance reads, "Welcome. Excellence is universal." The Equity Collection, designed by diverse talents like Jamal Carter, a young black artist, and Maria Gomez, a Latina jeweler, headlines the showroom, each piece paired with its creator's story of overcoming barriers. Lena, now assistant manager, leads training, her voice confident, her lessons rooted in empathy. Marcus, promoted to security lead, greets customers with warmth, his daughter's future secure. Evelyn stands among the crowd at the reopening, her navy scarf, a quiet callback to that fateful day. She listens to laughter, watches children play by the displays, and chats with Jamal about his next design. Her eyes glow with pride, not for sales, but for a legacy of change. The boutique is no longer a temple of exclusion, but a beacon of inclusion, a place where dignity reigns. In a nation built on second chances, Evelyn's stand is a reminder that justice begins with courage, that one voice can shift a tide. The emerald pendant, still in its case, seems to wink its light, a reflection of her triumph, a truth unveiled at last. The sunset stretches across Peachtree Street, its glow a promise of tomorrow. Evelyn's heart is full, her journey a testament to the power of standing firm. The most precious thing here isn't gold or gems, it's the moment when dignity prevails, when courage reshapes a world that once tried to dim it. Sometimes it takes a storm to clear the air, to let light shine through. Sterling Elegance is reborn, a lighthouse for those once unseen, a legacy that will echo far beyond these walls, reminding all that justice, when fought for, is the truest luxury of all.